Okay.
Okay, wonderful. Hi, Lynn. So good to see you
Hi.
again.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I read chapter 3 again, and I must say, this was one of the more difficult chapters for me to read because I feel so strongly about the things that happened to you as a child. And I know now, looking at it, it probably felt normal, and there was a lot of people doing these similar things to their kids back then, and that's why your generation grew up differently than mine did. But it triggered me a lot. Like it triggered me a lot.
So
So I have some questions about your chapter 3, and I'd like your ideas and your thoughts on that. And then starting off strong, the first one was one of the main themes that you mentioned in chapter 3 was when you were very young, you believed that you were a boy, right?
yeah,
And you mentioned that it came from a recent past life you had had where you were a boy. And so you believed that
right,
you were kind of continuing on with that theme and that you were a boy. I want to
right.
know, how did it feel like to feel like you are a boy? Because I've never felt that, right? So I don't know what the difference is between feeling like a boy and feeling like a girl. So how did that feel like for you, if you can recall?
I don't remember what I recall is what was in my mind, which is I don't recall the feelings that at that young of an age. I just what I recall most vividly is having dreams that I was a boy and that it was always a recurring dream that I was born a boy and that some doctor, after I was born, took me into an operating room and turned me into a girl. And hell is not appropriate for a video, but and turned me into a girl. And I kept saying, "Stop! No, no, no!" And I always woke up before the operation they were going to perform took place. So at some point when I was very young, I told my mom that I had this operation and and why were they going to give me this operation or something? And she was thought I was nuts. So that's all I remember about it. Not the
Wow.
feelings. Because it's
Okay.
not, I'm not transgender. It wasn't like being in the wrong body. It was
Mhm.
just this feeling that I was supposed to be a man.
Yeah. Yeah, because my follow-up would have, if you had said, you felt like you were transgender, my follow-up would be, well, then when did those feelings fade? Because you obviously are a woman and you live as a woman. So it was more like you believed you were a boy because you have that continuation of that other life.
Right.
And then that dream, that they were doing this to you. And I wonder if that dream was symbolic of something else, kind of like um all the other things that were going on, you know?
No, I don't think so. I honestly don't think so. I honestly, I thought I was a boy.
Mm.
I
Wow.
was supposed to, yeah,
Wow. I'm sure there are many others that have similar feelings when they were kids and they didn't know how to manage that as well.
yeah.
I highly doubt you were the one and only.
I doubt it. But people have them for different reasons, have those.
Yeah. And then the other theme that came up was that your parents were scientists and they were
Yeah,
obviously very much atheists and very adamant that there is no God, right?
right.
Um, but also I find it, and maybe I'm reading into things too much, but were they like short with you and your siblings when you brought up these ideas? I get the feeling that they got irritated, that they got, kind of, I don't know, just a feeling of like, oh, I don't want to talk about the subject. It's so stupid. It doesn't make sense, whatever. Do you feel like it's purely because they were scientists, they were atheists, they didn't believe in it, and that's the end of it? Or do you think that they knew some other beliefs, which you did mention, they did talk about other beliefs, but they didn't say what they were? Do you think that they were kind of not sure about what they believed in, and so your questions triggered them in a way?
What I understood later um, is that my lineage is, for cultural purposes is Jewish. And the one thing, and I learned all this later. I don't know, remember exactly what they said, but and actually I did have memories of what they said recently. What they said, and my dad told me like a long time later that I think his grandfather was a rabbi and lost faith and quit the rabbi, and that's where it started on his side. What they would say when I was old enough to understand it, because there was no concept, at least not in where I was, of God as consciousness. God was taught as like a man in the sky who punished and didn't punish and made people happy or sad or whatever. So that I understand what they said is if there was a God, he, and it was a male figure, would not have allowed the Holocaust to happen because they had family killed in the Holocaust. And then it went beyond, and if there was a God, there'd be no suffering. And and this may have been much later when I asked about the soul, because I heard about it from a book I read, they said that you can't see that, and there's no scientific proof of it, so there's no such thing. So with that kind of thing, it was if there's no material scientific proof of it, it doesn't exist. It had to be provable by science to exist. But the God thing, it had the whole thing had to do with human suffering and the Holocaust. So I don't think I was exposed to anything else. As far as I remember, I heard the term Jesus and Christmas. I had no idea what it was about. I wasn't exposed to anything else. I
Mm,
took a comparative religions class when I was 20 in college. I learned about it. I remember what I learned. It didn't sink in, and I wasn't exposed to anything else until I met my sister-in-law, which is in a later chapter. But
yeah,
no, I believed him because, okay, that makes
yeah.
sense from
Well, yes,
a
but also Alice, who was your caregiver when you were a kid, who you also mentioned in chapter 3, by the way,
yeah.
she did tell you and your siblings about Jesus based on the Bible. But I found it so fascinating that she would choose Revelations to teach children. Like, that is apocalyptic stuff. And she's teaching that to kids who are growing up in an atheist household. That's a little wild. She should have began with something softer, you know?
She didn't teach it though. What she did, she didn't explain to us what she was talking about. She would read the Bible and say, this is Revelations and the world is going to come to an end because of what the Bible said. So she didn't teach us anything. She just said this, and we're like, I don't understand what you're talking about. So she didn't teach us where she was getting this, except that it was in the Bible and in Revelations. And
Wow.
of course, we had never read even the Old Testament. So she says it's in the Bible. Okay, it's in the Bible. So it wasn't a teaching. If she had explained to us where she was getting this from, might have shed some light on it. But she didn't teach it either. She just would rant about the world coming to an end.
Wow. Wow. And again, the differences between your generation and mine, wild. Like, for example, your parents told you and your siblings about death, that once you die, that's it. It's the end,
Yeah.
lights out, everything's over, goodbye. And I can imagine that will give a child anxiety. And it did. It manifested a lot of fears for you and your
Yeah.
siblings. Um, your brother was the first to show some of those fears, and they got him some professional help, which did not
No,
help.
they didn't.
They didn't?
I was the only one they got professional help for.
Oh, yes, because you were biting kids, right?
Yeah, and because I had thought I was a boy, I bit a kid.
Oh, you bit one kid, yeah.
When my brother, who's now an atheist like my parents, when he was young, he used to get these like depressions over death. And my parents, no, they didn't get him any professional help. They developed a snarky name for it and said it'll pass and let him be depressed for as long as he was depressed.
My goodness. Wow. You know, as I read your book, the more I read about the childhood stuff, my mouth just hangs open. I'm like, I cannot believe this this happened. You know, this happened to you. Like when they took you to school for the first time when you were in kindergarten, and they just dropped you off and you thought they were never going to come back and get you. And I'm
Yeah.
thinking how anxious I was when I took my kid to preschool for the first time. And I explained to her multiple times, I'm going to come and get you at 12 o'clock. I'm going to be here and I'm going to come inside. I'm going to get you. Don't go anywhere. This is your teacher. And I would hold her hand and help her make friends. And I was like, how did these parents, and it's not just you, like a lot of your generation grew up with parents who I feel were a little bit heartless. And I'm thinking, like, how did they do this to you guys? It's so unfair that you felt abandoned at that age, you know?
Well, it was the first day of kindergarten, but and I don't like to use the word but. This book is not a sob story about my childhood, even though that stuff is in there, because of that was my soul's choices. And that was their soul's choices. And when now that I know that, and that it's only in there so people can understand their own suffering when they have suffering, number one, not to minimize it. I'm still in therapy to work through the hurt or whatever. I'm not going to bypass it. It's not, but it's not in there to say, oh, what a miserable childhood you had, or gosh, these were bad parents or whatever. It's there to see, number one, that I chose it, and number two, to show that no matter what happened to me as a child, it was overcomable. So it's not about the bad childhood. I just felt that to for people to feel they could overcome things, and understand my journey, that had to be in there. I didn't really like writing about it because it starts to sound like a sob story, but I don't look at it that way anymore. I played the victim long enough, it's like, okay, when I understood I chose it, it's like, okay, and it was a great learning experience.
Yeah.
And childhood is a blip in time of eternity. So,
I mean, not at all. I didn't at all get the feeling that you were, looking for sympathy or it was a sub story or anything.
right.
It's just the differences in how your generation and my generation grew up that kind of shocked me, so it was
Yeah,
more like a shock value type thing.
right,
And then my comparison between like how I'm raising my kids, you don't have kids, so I would have compared like, how you would
right.
do it differently. Um, so it was just so because I watch a lot of people online who are also talking about their upbringings in a way of it's therapeutic in a way. A lot of us have
Yeah,
traumas, that we've had as kids or whatever. And there's this term, I think it's called latchkey kids, where they had to do their own thing. You come home from
yeah.
school, you let yourself in, you make yourself something to eat, you do your homework and you fend for yourself, basically. And again, I cannot relate with that because that wasn't my experience. So when I'm reading it, I'm just having more
Oh, yeah.
compassion, more compassion and more understanding for you and your generation, for how you grew up. Like even the when your dad and your family, you guys went out to eat, and your dad would drive drunk, and you guys would be afraid because he was so erratic and he's like that. I'm like, that is insane. This sounds like a movie. It
And
was wild.
I don't consider myself a latchkey kid because we had caretakers.
Yeah.
I don't have kids, so I'm commenting from my own personal opinion with no kids. Whether it's quote unquote, it's different today, though, I do see or hear about young mothers pushing strollers and looking at their texts and emails and ignoring the babies. I'm not sure I want to be grow up with my mother ignoring me and being on the phone and on their, on their devices instead of paying attention to me either. So there's something for every generation that ideally could use some improvement here.
For sure. I can agree with that. And I'm guilty of that too sometimes. And my eldest, she was an iPad kid, because a lot of the time I had to care for her by myself. When she was very young, I was working from home, but I was always working because I needed to, I had to, and I had no other family around that would care for her when I was busy. And I did something I probably shouldn't have done, but I mean, I don't see any negative effects right now. But
No.
she was an iPad kid. I gave her an iPad and I said, Here, watch Bluey or whatever show was on. Um, and she would fall asleep. And I was like, Cool, she's getting her nap and I'm getting my work done and no harm, no foul. Um, but I understand what you're saying. Like there are in every generation things that can be worked on. But I do love how you ended chapter 3 and exactly what you said, that all of this is not a sob story, it was a catalyst for you to
Right.
grow, for your spiritual growth, for your evolution. You chose this. This is how it played out. And you wouldn't change anything about it because of where you are now and what you've learned and what you've overcome. And in this moment of you sharing these stories, helping others overcome too, you know.
Yeah.
So it's wonderful that you have that perspective. Because I feel like a lot of people do get stuck in the resentment of it all for a little bit too long, you know? It is about growth at the end of the day.
Yeah, it is about growth and, in later, the much later chapters, I saw it went far back beyond this life and my parents and, just things that needed healing and my soul chose to heal from way back and it just put everything in perspective. And, as I said earlier, it's not a substitute for me seeing a therapist to work out the human, you know, feelings and stuff. But it was a catalyst also for stop blaming mom. Stop stop the unforgiveness and the shame and the blame and the, you know, just living in that resentment and, all that stuff that wasn't serving me and it was keeping me stuck.
Yeah. And even I agree with you. And even if, we didn't have experiences similar to yours, we can all relate to that. The blaming
Yeah,
someone, the shaming, the blaming, the resentment, the anger, all those issues where at the end of the day, we chose this. At the end of the
yeah,
day, there are lessons to be learned in everything we experience, and we can choose to learn them or to stay resentful, stay angry, stay stuck, you know?
right.
Yeah. So I tremendously enjoyed chapter 3, even though it did give me a little bit of, how could they do this to poor little Lynn? you
It
know?
was hard. It was hard to write because the feelings came up again. I'm not going to deny
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, and writing does that. You have to relive because you need to find the right words. And to find the right words, you need to feel that feeling again. Oh, I felt
Yeah,
abandoned. I need to write about it. It really it brings it up. It brings it up from a deep place where you
yeah, it
think
does.
it's yeah.
And which is good because then when I went to my therapist, I said, I'm feeling this again. And then we start to work and that tells me we need more work on it, both on
Yes,
my own and with the therapist.
that's exactly right. Yeah, because we think we've dealt with an issue until we write about it. And then we know, oh, I touched a little sore spot. I need to go back.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I am so grateful for you. Thank you, Lynn.
Oh,
I will
sure.
put all the links to your book, to your meditation, everything, your website, your email, everything I'll put down in the description. And next week we'll
Yeah.
talk chapter 4.
Yeah, I'll have to send you a new meditation link.
Yeah.
It's actually people will have to, and I'm saying this while we're on camera, I've changed the format for I'm doing it with a different person.
Okay.
And we're doing it on the Boston International Association of Near-Death Studies group. It's being done there, and I'll send you the registration link for that where people can
Perfect.
register.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Lynn. Well, I look forward to
Sure.
seeing you for chapter 4 next week,
Okay.
and I hope you have a wonderful day further.
You too. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Lynn. Bye.
Bye.